You need to understand something essential. When you go no contact, the dynamic changes. For perhaps the first time, you are no longer feeding the pattern. You are no longer providing the endless supply of validation, explanation, or pursuit that he had grown comfortable with. That silence, it rattles him. And so when he reappears, when he sends that message, when he tests the waters, it is not because he suddenly woke up enlightened. It is because he wants to know if you still belong to the same cycle. Testing is about power, not love. When he tests you, he's not necessarily trying to reconcile. He's probing for control. He wants to know if the absence of contact made you stronger or if you're still waiting like before. He'll drop a casual line, maybe an indifferent text, maybe even an attempt at subtle guilt. It's a small move, but the intent is large. Will she break? Will she give me back the certainty I lost? And this is where most people crumble. They confuse the test for affection, the message for genuine care, but it isn't that. It's about power. Who holds it now? That's the core of the test. Your reaction defines the outcome. It's not his test, it's yours. When that message comes, when that door opens even a crack, your response writes the script. Do you fall back into old patterns, instantly proving that nothing has changed? Or do you demonstrate restraint, self-respect, and clarity? Understand this. In that moment, the entire dynamic hinges not on what he says, but on how you respond. Every word, every delay, every boundary signals something. If you rush in, desperate to reassure, you prove that his absence meant little. If you hold your ground, if you answer with calm detachment, or even better, silence, you show that the weeks of no contact weren't wasted. They were preparation. Emotional self-control is your real weapon. You cannot be swayed by temporary words or shallow attempts. Testing is meant to destabilize you. It's meant to make you reveal whether you're still dependent on his approval. And here is where most people fail. They think strength is about saying the perfect words. It's not. Strength is composure. Strength is the ability to feel the pull, the temptation, the fear of loss, and still remain steady. Do not underestimate the power of calm silence. It's louder than any speech. It says, I am not where you left me. I am not defined by your return. My center is mine. That is the kind of strength that shifts dynamics permanently. No contact is a training ground for transformation. If you've used it correctly, it has forced you to face yourself. It has demanded discipline, loneliness, and patience. And when he finally tests you, that is your chance to prove to yourself, not to him, that you are no longer living for someone else's attention. Think about it. Transformation is not measured when things are easy. It's revealed in the hardest test, the very moment you're tempted to fall back into old cycles. That is why his test matters. It's not about him, it's about you. It's about proving that the silence was not wasted. So here's the truth. He will test you. He will push to see if you're the same. That's inevitable. But the outcome is not written yet. You write it in your reaction. Stand firm. Breathe. Resist the urge to explain, to chase, to prove. You owe no performance. You owe no surrender. Because the test is not about winning him back. It's about winning yourself back. And if you do that, if you hold your ground with strength and clarity, then no matter what he decides, you've already won. That's the truth most people refuse to see. When someone tests you after silence, after distance, after you've drawn a boundary, it's not because they're overwhelmed with affection. It's because they want to know whether they still have influence. They want to check if their absence weakened you, if their presence still dictates your emotions, if the old strings they used to pull still control you. When he tests you, it won't look dramatic. It may be a casual message. A hey, how are you? That arrives out of nowhere, a reaction to something you posted, a breadcrumb, subtle but intentional. Don't mistake it for care. It is a probe. It is him saying, do I still matter? Do I still control the temperature of your emotions? And your reaction, what you do in that exact moment, determines everything. Most people fail here. They light up at the first sign of contact. They rush to respond, eager, desperate, relieved. In doing so, they announce, nothing has changed. You still hold the power. You can vanish, you can return, and I will still be waiting. That is how control is reinforced. That is how cycles repeat endlessly. But power shifts when you stop feeding that pattern. Testing only works if you engage with it. If you refuse to play, the test collapses. You need to realize that silence is not weakness. Restraint is not avoidance. It is power. Because the one who can stay calm, measured, and self-possessed is the one who dictates the dynamic. Love does not test you. Love does not disappear only to reappear with uncertainty. Love does not force you to prove your loyalty after abandonment. Testing is a game of dominance. It's the insecure need to know whether you've moved on or whether they can still pull you back. And if you don't see it for what it is, you'll confuse manipulation with connection. Here is the critical shift. Your reaction is the test, not their message. They're not examining who you are. They're examining how you behave under pressure. Do you fold? Do you return to old patterns? Or do you reveal that the silence transformed you into someone stronger, clearer, more disciplined? Emotional self-control is everything here. You will feel the pull. You will feel the temptation to answer, to reopen the door, to give them exactly what they came for, proof that they still matter more than your peace. But in that moment, you must hold your ground. Because self-control signals growth. It shows that you are no longer living in reaction to someone else's inconsistency. Do not think strength is about saying the perfect line. It's not about crafting the smartest reply or the sharpest comeback. True strength is composure. It's the ability to feel the old trigger and remain unshaken. It's silence that carries more weight than words. It's calmness that unsettles the tester far more than any emotional outburst ever could. The silence of no contact was never meant to punish. It was meant to prepare, to force you to build discipline, to make you confront your dependence, your fears, your loneliness. And when the test arrives, that's when all that preparation is measured. You either prove that the silence was wasted, or you prove that it built a new version of you. Understand this. Testing is not about the relationship. It is not about closure. It is not even about you in truth. It is about them needing reassurance of their own significance. But here's the key. You don't need to provide that reassurance anymore because your worth is not tied to whether they still want control. If you stand firm, if you refuse to fold, you shift the balance forever. You send a message without speaking. I am not where you left me. I am not waiting in the same place. My life has continued, my strength has grown, and I am no longer defined by your approval. That message is unshakable. That message is undeniable. And here's the paradox. When you stop feeding the test, you pass it, not by proving yourself to him, but by proving yourself to you. You demonstrate that you no longer confuse power with love. You no longer confuse manipulation with connection. You no longer confuse inconsistency with desire. So remember this. Every test is an illusion of care. It is not affection. It is control. And your reaction decides whether that control survives or dies. Testing is about power, not love. And the moment you choose self-respect over reaction, composure over chaos, silence over surrender, you win the only test that matters. That's the line most people overlook. Not his words, not his actions, not his silence. Your reaction is what decides everything, because every test, every withdrawal, every attempt to provoke you is designed to measure one thing: how much control you still give away. Think about it. Life doesn't reward you for what happens to you. It rewards you for how you respond. The person who provokes you is not in control. The one who chooses their response is. When he pulls back, when he tests your patience, when he throws uncertainty into the dynamic, that moment is not the battlefield of his emotions. It's the battlefield of yours. And what you do there writes the entire story. Most people fail because they don't see it. They think the outcome lies in changing him. They rush to explain, to chase, to convince, but all they're doing is handing back the power. They're saying, you decide, you control how I feel, you dictate where this goes. And with that reaction, the cycle continues, predictable, exhausting, destructive. But if you want to reclaim control, you must understand your reaction is the lever that shifts the entire balance. Silence is not weakness. Calmness is not indifference. Detachment is not cruelty. These are signs of discipline. And discipline is what flips the test back on the tester. Because here's the truth. He doesn't test you out of love. He tests you out of uncertainty. He wants to know if he still matters. He wants to know if the same patterns still work. He wants to know if, despite his absence, you're still waiting to react the way you always have. The test is not about reconciliation. It's about power. And if you fold, if you rush back into the cycle, you answer the question for him, yes, you still control me. But if you don't, if you hold steady, if you refuse to be rushed, pressured, or destabilized, then suddenly the test backfires because your composure reveals something terrifying to someone who relies on control. You've changed. You're not who you were before. The same moves don't work. The old hooks don't hold. And this is where transformation begins. Not in grand speeches, not in emotional outbursts, but in restraint. Power is not shouting louder. Power is being unshaken when someone expects you to fall apart. Your reaction is your message. You don't need to explain that you've grown. You don't need to announce that you've built boundaries. You don't need to perform strength. Your silence, your calm, your refusal to collapse under pressure, those actions speak louder than anything you could ever say. Remember this, people reveal their true nature when they test you, but you reveal your true strength when you respond. And the one who keeps control of themselves always wins. Always. Because nobody can manipulate what they cannot move. So when the test comes, and it will, do not see it as a threat. See it as an opportunity. It is the moment you prove to yourself that the silence of no contact wasn't wasted, that you didn't just endure the waiting, you grew through it. It's the exam that shows whether you learn to stand without needing external validation. The weak crumble at the first sign of attention. They break their own progress just to feel a moment of comfort. But the strong, those who have disciplined their emotions, use that test to showcase their transformation. They remain composed, they remain steady, and by doing so, they prove they no longer live in reaction to someone else's inconsistency. This is the paradox of power. The less you react, the more control you hold, not over them, over yourself, because that is the only control that ever mattered. If your peace still depends on what someone else does, then you've learned nothing. But if your peace remains untouched, regardless of their test, then you've won before the game even begins. So let me tell you this, the outcome is not in his hands. It never was. The outcome is written in how you respond. Do you let him dictate your emotions, or do you demonstrate that your life no longer bends around his presence? Do you surrender the progress you've made, or do you guard it with strength and clarity? Your reaction defines the outcome. That's the principle. That's the truth. You cannot control what he does, but you can always control what you do. And that single truth shifts everything. So the next time he tests you, remember, you are not being asked to prove your love. You are being asked to prove your strength. And the right reaction, the calm, steady, disciplined reaction will always expose the difference between who you were and who you've become. Not your charm, not your beauty, not your ability to argue or persuade. Your weapon, the one thing that cannot be taken from you unless you give it away, is your ability to remain composed when everything around you is trying to pull you apart. Understand this, people test you not to see your love, but to see your stability. They want to know if the same buttons still work, if the same words can still trigger you, if they can still drag you into the chaos they create. And in those moments, what determines the outcome isn't their action, it's your reaction. And your reaction is dictated by one thing only, emotional self-control. Most people think strength is loud. They think it's about the comeback, the dramatic gesture, the storm of words. That's not strength, that's surrender. Because when you lose control of yourself, you've already handed them the power. You've proven that they can dictate how you feel, how you think, how you act. That is weakness, no matter how loud it looks. But the one who holds steady, the one who breathes when others expect them to break, that person carries real power, because control of the self is control of the game. Think about it. When he tests you after silence, what's he really doing? He's not rushing back with full commitment. He's poking at the door. He's checking if you're still waiting, still vulnerable, still desperate for his presence. That test is designed to destabilize you, to make you reveal your hand, to show whether your weeks of no contact built strength, or whether they were just a pause before the same weakness returned. And here's the truth. If you react with chaos, you fail. If you rush to reply, you fail. If you collapse into the old patterns, you fail. Not because you lost him, but because you lost yourself. But if you stay calm, if you read the message, feel the emotion, but choose discipline, then you win. Not over him, but over yourself. That is the real test. That is the real battle. And your self-control is the only weapon that guarantees victory. Do not confuse silence with weakness. Silence is strength when it is chosen. Restraint is power when it is deliberate. The one who can hold back when provoked demonstrates mastery over themselves. And mastery over yourself is the foundation of respect, both self-respect and the respect others must give you. Because let me tell you this, respect does not come from chasing, pleading, or proving. Respect is commanded by the way you carry yourself under pressure. When you remain calm in the face of chaos, people notice. When you refuse to be moved by games, people adjust. Your composure forces them to see you differently, whether they admit it or not. And here is where most fail. They want instant relief. They want the pain of silence to end. They want the test to feel like love. So they break their own boundaries just for a moment of reassurance. But that reassurance costs them everything. Because the moment you surrender your self-control, you teach the other person that they don't need to respect you. They just need to wait until you break. Self-control is discipline in motion. It's you saying, I am no longer defined by someone else's behavior. I am not pulled back and forth like a puppet on strings. I stand where I choose to stand. That's power. That's authority. And it is unshakable when you train it. You don't win this battle by being more emotional. You win it by being more disciplined, by refusing to let your peace depend on another's inconsistency, by choosing silence when chaos is expected, by choosing calm when provocation is designed to trigger you. Because at the end of the day, relationships, breakups, reconciliations, they are all negotiations of power. And the one who controls themselves always wins the negotiation. Not always the person, not always the relationship, but they win the outcome that matters. Dignity, respect, and peace of mind. So when the test comes, and it will, remember this, your weapon is not your words. Your weapon is not your desperation to be understood. Your weapon is not your attempt to prove your value. Your weapon is your self-control. The ability to remain steady, calm, and firm when every nerve in your body wants to break. That is what commands respect. That is what proves transformation. That is what ensures you never return to the same cycle again. And when you pass that test, not by winning him, but by winning yourself, you'll understand why composure is the most terrifying answer you can give to manipulation. Because they can argue with your words, they can twist your explanations, they can dismiss your emotions, but they cannot touch your calm, they cannot move your silence, they cannot control what refuses to react. So never forget this. Emotional self-control is not just a skill, it is your shield, it is your weapon, it is the line between the person who collapses into the old cycle and the person who rises above it. Most people see it as punishment. They think it's about shutting someone out, about playing games, about revenge, but they miss the deeper truth. No contact is not about him. It's about you. It's not a tactic for control. It's a discipline for growth. It is the battlefield where you learn to stop needing what was destroying you and to start building the strength that makes you untouchable. Because silence is not easy. Distance is not easy. Every fiber of your being will want to reach out, to explain, to check, to chase. You will feel the pull of habit, the ache of attachment, the fear of losing what you once depended on. And that's where the training begins. Nobelium contact forces you to confront yourself without distraction. It demands that you sit with the discomfort instead of running back to the very person who created it. Understand this, transformation never happens in comfort. It is forged in restraint, in discipline, in the refusal to do what feels easy in the moment. No contact is that crucible. It's where you break old patterns by resisting them. It's where you prove that your emotions no longer command you. You command them. Every day you hold the line, you grow stronger. Every time you silence the urge to break it, you rewire your mind. You stop living in reaction to someone else's inconsistency. You stop handing them the keys to your peace. Slowly, you start building your own. That's why no contact matters. Not because it changes them, but because it changes you. And when the test comes, when they return with their breadcrumbs, with their casual message, with their subtle attempt to regain control, that is when the training shows. If you spent no contact waiting, obsessing, and counting days, you will fold. But if you spent no contact building, reflecting, and disciplining yourself, you will stand firm. That's the difference. One path leaves you vulnerable. The other path transforms you into someone unrecognizable, not to them, but to yourself. You see, love without boundaries is not love. It's dependency. And dependency is what no contact breaks. It forces you to live without the fix, without the reassurance, without the drip of validation you used to rely on. That withdrawal feels brutal, but it's how you detox from dysfunction. It's how you prove to yourself that you can breathe on your own again. And the irony? The moment you stop needing them is the moment the dynamic changes. Because people can only control what you depend on. Once you don't, their power dissolves. No contact strips them of that power, not because you cut them off, but because you rebuilt yourself. Do not waste that silence. Do not spend it scrolling through memories, replaying old conversations, waiting for the phone to buzz. That's not training. That's stagnation. Use it. Journal, reflect, grow, build routine, strengthen your body, sharpen your mind. Every time you feel the urge to break the silence, redirect it into building yourself. That's how no contact becomes transformation. Not a waiting room, but a workshop. Because here's the truth. The old version of you cannot build the life you want. That version tolerated disrespect. That version confused testing with love. That version gave away power in the name of attention. No contact is the process of killing that version of you and rebirthing the one who will never settle for less again. And yes, it hurts. Transformation always does. Growth is uncomfortable. But that discomfort is proof you're doing the work. It means the old cycle is breaking. It means you're stepping out of dependency and into strength. So when you feel the ache, when you feel the temptation to reach out, don't see it as weakness. See it as training. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you are reinforcing a new identity. Every time you sit in the silence, you are building resilience. And when the test arrives, your composure will speak louder than any words ever could. Remember this, no contact is not about winning him back. It's not about making him miss you. It's not about revenge. It is about you becoming someone who no longer needs games to prove your worth. Someone who can stand alone, grounded, calm, and free. No contact is the gym for your soul. It builds emotional muscle. It burns away dependency. It shapes resilience. And just like physical training, the results don't show in a day. But when the moment comes, when pressure is applied, when the test is given, you will see what you've built. And here's the ultimate paradox. Once you've transformed, once you've built that unshakable core, you realize you never even needed the outcome you were once desperate for. Because the real outcome was never him. The real outcome was you. So never forget it. No contact is not emptiness. It is construction. Not punishment. It is discipline. Not an ending. It is a beginning. The training ground where you stop living for someone else's approval and start living from your own strength. And when you walk out of that training ground transformed, no test, no silence, no return, and no rejection can ever control you again.